We certainly can track down the killer for you, Sheriff. Only, what's in it for us? I mean, it's one of our own. It's a complete stranger. We don't know who they are at all. But if we were to work with you, lawman, what would be in it for us?
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great Player. Well, this question came through on our Discord channel about how to work with the law, how to roleplay your characters actually working within the legal framework of the role-playing system that you might find yourselves in. And for a long time I pondered, thinking, is there really a lot to it in terms of working with law enforcement within a role-playing space? How many role-playing systems are actually going to go into that level of detail? And then I started to think about it, and there are many role-playing systems where there are very strong legal elements where it could actually be useful to think about how do we engage with those individuals, how do we engage with law officers, to make the story more interesting and to give us more role-playing opportunities. So when I looked at it, I thought, okay, well, let's look at the law, let's look at reporting, and then let's look at the relationships that happen as a result of this weird idea of working with the law. What is the law? What is the law? What's this law thing? What do we do? This is an important thing to understand. You have to ask your game master or your dungeon master or narrator, whatever your system calls the person who's in charge of the game, you have to ask them, what are your laws? What are the allowances? What are the restrictions? And what are the grey areas? Now, I have started watching a TV show recently called Lucifer. I can't say that it's my favourite TV show of all time, but it's slightly amusing. Here we have the devil working with the law, and he frequently breaks the law in every episode, but still manages to get away with it. If you look at Sherlock Holmes, the Benedict Cumberbatch version, well, there you have a private detective who also frequently breaks the law, but gets the results in the end, so kind of gets away with it. The idea, though, is that they all know what the law is, and then they violate it. All right, in Lucifer's case, he doesn't really know. He doesn't care, really. Nonetheless, there is a framework, however, that can be checked against. So, as a player, you need to ask your GM, can you give me, in surface detail, the laws and ordinances of the environment? If we're playing in a Star Wars game and I want to help the Stormtroopers and the Imperial Guard, what are my limitations? Can I bash down the doors of civilians and drag them out into the street, making a civilian arrest? Or do I have to call a bunch of Stormtroopers over and point out the criminals and then watch as the Stormtroopers miss hitting a single one of them? Can I shoot the criminals? What are the allowances? So what are the allowances and what are the restrictions? By understanding those, you can then start to create grey areas. Now, before we go any further, why would you want to work with the law? Why would you want your PC to work with the law? There are a few reasons why you might want to work with the law. If your PC is new into town and you are looking for adventures, and let's say your GM is running a sandbox style game where they don't have a singular plot, it's just you go around and you find cool stuff to do and you do the cool stuff. Going to law enforcement and offering your services to help, especially if it's in a fantasy kind of setting, would be of great benefit. You'll get a lot of adventure opportunities there. The GM can give you all kinds of missions that the law enforcement don't necessarily want to go on. Alternatively, if your characters become embroiled in a situation, let's say it's a modern day setting or it's a future setting, where the law gets involved but your characters have got specific knowledge, you could become a civilian consultant, which is kind of where Sherlock Holmes was certainly in the original books. He was a consulting detective. But also the idea is that because your characters have got specific knowledge, they can be of use to the law from time to time. Again, it just allows your characters to get involved in narratives that your game master might want you to be involved with. Another advantage to working with the law, of course, is that the law is on your side, so if you do commit some shady things, if you wander into the grey areas, there's more leniency towards your party. So the idea working with the law is manyfold. Many opportunities presented both from a metagame perspective as well as from an in-game perspective. You might also find that your characters end up being bounty hunters, in which case there are still rules, there are still laws. In Star Wars, there don't appear to be any. As long as you're working for Darth Vader, you can do pretty much whatever you like, well, except for disintegrations. So, if we then look at it, if your GM doesn't have the laws, if your GM goes, what? You want the law of the kingdom? I haven't got those. I didn't write those. No GM's ever going to write those. Well, that's not entirely true. If you're a proper GM, you might have actually done that. If you watch the Campaign Creator series, that's where we're getting to shortly, creating the law. It's important to have some notes, even if it's a case of commit a crime, your head gets cut off. There we go. What's a crime? Anything that's against the state is a crime. Okay, good. Stealing is against the state. If it's against the state, head cut off. If it's against a civilian, head cut off. Okay, that is a legal system I can work with without a doubt. So you can then look at it and look for grey areas as well. Oh, well, we could also, if we declare that this person looked suspicious, we can then legally shoot them as long as it's in their face and not in their back. We're okay. Okay, well, there we go. This is not to say that you need to go and learn the entire ordinance of the city of Ankh-Morpork. That's insane. Your GM should give you broad stroke overviews, and where there might be specific laws that come into play, then perhaps they can give you more specific guidelines as and when they're required. There's nothing stopping you from GM from saying, well, as you're running down that corridor ready to stab the victim through the head with your lightsaber, you do remember law number 28 in the book that you've been given and that you've read that says very specifically if it's from behind, it's seen not as self-defense but as an aggressive act, and you may yourself end up become a criminal. So your GM can prompt you, or you can prompt your GM. Hey, GM, we think there are drugs inside this crate, but we don't have any kind of official reason to open this crate. Is there such a thing as a warrant to search this crate? You can prompt for those kinds of questions. So when there are grey areas, when the rules are not entirely clear, there's nothing stopping you from stepping out saying, well, I would have read the book, my character would have read the book. If you're a good player, your character would have spoken to the detective, okay, I'll help work with you, but can you give me a copy of the law? Can you give me a copy of the rules so I can just read through them? My character spends the next 6 evenings reading through all of the rules. That's good role-playing on your behalf, and then it allows you to sort of step out from a meta and say, well, what about this, what about that? Once you are working with the law, what are some of the things that you need to then do to make it feel as if you're working with the law? This is not something that the game master might force. It's something that you can bring to the table as a good role player. So the idea is report, keep it simple. Well, we discovered this and this and this. That's what we discovered, my lord. Okay, great. This now allows the GM to then give you further information, further instructions, whatever the situation might be. The GM can then offer you tidbits for the next adventure, for the continuation of the adventure. So keep it simple when you're reporting. Don't go into lots of detail. The GM's been present all the time. Remember that. Keep it regular. Now, keeping it regular might sound like, wow, it doesn't really matter. The GM's with us all the time, so yeah, we send the report off. No, it does matter, because when you unpack the entire genre of the cop, the detective, the film noir type of mystery situation, the reporting back to HQ is frequently important. It also allows a GM to construct a much more complex narrative. As the police officers, those in charge, get your reports, then things can happen. The corrupt cop can try and interfere. The head of police, the chief of police, can realize that you're close to solving the case and they can give you extra supplies, or they can pull you back because they're worried that it's going to cause an issue. However the game master wants to play it, by keeping it regular, by saying, oh, we must submit a report. I'm going to phone the report in. I'm going to write it down on a piece of paper and give it to a pigeon to fly, you fool. Go and report this to the HQ. By doing that, all you're doing is you are just role-playing it to the max. You are making sure that what you have chosen as a path in terms of working with the law is working for you. You can also test it. Send some reports back that contain erroneous information. See if they're paying attention. It allows the GM to give you opportunity to roleplay, to explore. If the detective doesn't respond to your notes, are they really paying attention? In which case you might be able to get away with more. If they do respond to your reports, if they do engage and that kind of thing, well, it's NPC engagement, which is what you want as a player. Part of our game is about engaging with NPCs. So you need to do some form of reporting. It's also good for you. Now, why is it good for you? As the player, if you are working with law enforcement, if you are working in a space where you are detecting, where you're trying to solve something, drugs were stolen from the warehouse, where did they go? You're trying to solve that. Someone was murdered in the castle, who did it? You're trying to solve that. Generally, cops are trying to solve something or hunt somebody down, which is really just solving where did they go. When you are in that kind of situation, you can get lost. You can miss a clue. You can kind of make the wrong call and just go in the wrong direction. All of these things are entirely possible. By reporting, you are constructing your own logical thoughts down on paper. This is something that I see players not doing a lot. They don't write things down, or at least they kind of go, okay, we discovered this. Right, good. But you didn't write it down, and you didn't interrogate when did it happen, who made it happen. So there's certain things that writing a report actually allow you to do that help you as the player to figure out whatever it is you're trying to solve. In the report, okay, this time this happened and this happened by this person, and these are my witnesses who saw that. We don't actually... How did we figure out that the docks at midnight was where it happened? Oh, we didn't. That was me guessing. Take that out of the report. Oh, no. Remember that little old lady? She told us, the little old lady who runs the donut store. Okay, cool. Little old lady who was running the donut store at midnight saw people on the docks. Why was the little old lady selling donuts at midnight? Who's going to buy donuts at midnight? The dock closes at 11. That's a good question. We need to go back to the little old lady and ask her something. That was just by writing the report. Jotting down what you know into a collective whole is going to make your detective work that much easier. Trust me, it really will. So reporting is not only about NPC interaction, it's about actually solving the case as well. Relationships. This is one of the most important components of working with the law, is that it builds relationships. Whenever you look at any kind of cop drama, whether it's Sherlock Holmes, whether it's Lucifer, whether it's NYPD Blue, whether it's Cops, doesn't matter. The relationships that exist are going to be really, really good. Now, you're going to get relationships with other NPCs without a doubt. But when you start to build in these kinds of stories, it's good to have these relationships. And it's good to have positive relationships with law enforcement. It's an interesting angle, which not a lot of players go down necessarily. Usually the law is seen as something suspicious, corrupt, and ultimately to be avoided because they're going to try and stop you from going on whatever quest or mission that you're trying to do. It also allows for team play, and it allows you to be a team player. Solving a mystery is oftentimes done by one individual. You have a party. Make sure that you are using that party to the best of their abilities. If you're trying to solve a murder, well, you're good at detecting little trace clues. You're good at research. You're good at this. Let's do that. So the relationship within the party becomes stronger as you draw on the strengths of each other. One of the important things about working with the law is saying, okay, well, we were all involved, except for Bob. Bob wasn't involved because we didn't ask him to do anything. But Bob's really good at biology, and there was a lot of plant stuff that we found, but we never bothered to research that. Well, that's what Bob should have been doing. So by breaking down whatever it is that you're trying to detect, whatever you're trying to solve, into various party roles, it's like, well, you're good at talking. You go and canvass people. You're good at this. Allocating roles. Being a team player really, really builds relationships around the table as well as within the party itself. And then finally, helping out. By helping out the law, well, you're doing a good thing, even though it's a fantasy environment, yes, and maybe you're not the hero that you really want to be, but crime solving is important, and bringing the bad guys to justice is important. It helps clear out the city of bad guys, allowing for your characters to ultimately become the true mob bosses, who are also completely and utterly ingratiated into the police force, and can now manipulate it from within. Or you're just a good person and you eradicate crime from the city, and life is great. When you look at superhero movies as an example of this, the superheroes traditionally have always had a rather confrontational space with the police. There's a reason for it. Superheroes are violating most countries' laws. You can't be a vigilante. You cannot take the law into your own hands. You are a criminal in doing so, even if you are capturing criminals. Once you get people like Tony Stark going, hey, I'm a superhero, this is me, and I'm going to try and work within the bounds of the law, and then he doesn't really work within the bounds of the law, but there is a certain accountability that's in place, a small accountability that's in place. The entire rift over the Avengers was about working within the confines of a gigantic legal system. So the law is not just something boring, something to be ignored, or something to be fought against. When you work with it, there are a lot of opportunities for role-playing to happen. How do you work with the law? Do you work with the law? Do you think your GM is ready for you to turn around and say, I help the guards to arrest the thugs. I help the guards to take the thugs back to the prison, and then offer my services to the prison warden. If you need help, give me a shout. I'm happy to be there. Let us know in the comments down below. Love to chat about it. Love to unpack all the things that there can be with, are you ready to work with the law? Until next time, happy playing. All right. We have taken out the Los Diablos. We have cleaned up the Mexicana Chili Bite gang. We've taken out the Holy Avengers. We've cleaned out the Hillbillies. And all that's left is now the Sewer Queens. I quite like this job. I like it. I really like it. I totally like it. As a matter of fact, I could subscribe to this whole legal thing. Yeah, I could. Oh, sorry. Is that a siren? Is there a criminal on the run? Oh, no, it's just a bell ringing for Goblin lunch. Psh, they're probably criminals, actually. I'll be right back.